All right, and with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker,
Chippewa Valley Code Camp.
Brian P. Hogan. He's a prestigious published professor. He's a pioneer and really a powerful pillar in this community of programmers. Through his prolific prose, he's provided his pupils precious philosophies, present company included. As a pedagogue, he's a paragon of the practice. To package it plainly, he's a prize. And I'll proffer that he is a perpetually pleasant personality. I was perturbed to find that no one actually knows his middle name, though he publishes every book with his middle initial. So good people of Code Camp, I am pleased as punch to present to you this morning the phenomenal Mr. Brian Party Boy Hogan.
Hey, gang. So, real fun story time. The reason I have professionally gone as Brian P. Hogan is that, anybody remember the iPhone 4? Anybody remember that the iPhone 4 prototype was lost in a bar by an intern at Apple? Well, that dude's name is Brian Hogan. So when you Googled for that name, you got that dude. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks to Dan for inviting me to do this. Thanks to CVCC for hosting this. Thanks to all of you for showing up. Thanks to all the volunteers for helping put this together. This is something that's always really important to me to be here to bring community together. I've been speaking at these kinds of events for a very long time. And when I see people on stage now that were people in my audiences 15, 17 years ago, it's really cool to see that what we're doing is building a community of people that can grow together. I think it's really important, especially now. There's a lot of things going on, and being able to come together, especially in these times when we're seeing lots of job losses, we're seeing lots of people having to retrain. This is the time when communities like ours come together. So I'm going to do my best to mitigate the technical issues that we're having with the screen. So I have my slides on my phone, and we're going to drive them that way. So if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not texting. Okay? I'm just looking at the slides to make sure I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to talk with you about, being human in the loop. This is a talk about AI, but it's also a talk about growing. Talk about getting better and how to position yourself. You've seen this life advice before, right? You've probably given it. You've probably
Never
told.
Surrender. How about never surrender?
Hey, that's a song from the 80s. You've probably given this advice to kids, to other people, but you know what? It's not good advice. So I'm going to fix it for you. Okay? I'm going to fix this for you. I think it's really important to understand you've got to know when it's time to move on. You've got to understand that sometimes you can do your best, but your best isn't rewarded. There's a difference between effort and impact. These are important things for us to remember. Not every system rewards hard work. It's just the way that it works out. I promise you that while I'm sitting in an air-conditioned room in the middle of summer typing on the keyboard, those people replacing my roof outside in 100-degree weather are working a lot harder than I am. Who am I and why should you care? I have taught over 1,000 people software development and career skills over the last 10 years. Done it through actual classes. I've taught thousands more through books and articles that I've written. I have read thousands of resumes. I have interviewed hundreds of people. I've hired people. I've fired people. I've built high-performing teams in remote distributed systems environments. And I've been a software engineer, I've been a musician, I have been a lot of different things. I've had to reinvent myself so many times, and that's why I'm here to talk to you today, because you're going to have to reinvent yourself. Or at least course correct. AI is taking jobs. It might be a convenient scapegoat, but it's still taking jobs. Whether it's the AI or the companies looking at it and going, we don't need as many people. And the question is, maybe they don't need as many people. We saw the Block laid off 4,000 people, saying it's because of AI. We just saw, was it Thursday, that Atlassian let go 1,000 people because 1,500 AI? 1,500? Like AI? I don't believe that AI was, like, replaced all those people, but I do believe that it's plausible that over the course of all the employees, there was enough work that could be automated to reduce the amount of headcount. I do believe that that's true, and I believe that's a distinction that matters for us. The hard truth, your job is not to write code. Never has been. And I always hear this one, no, my job isn't to write code, it's to solve problems. No, it's not. Oh, it's not. That sounds nice. It sounds better than focusing on the code, but in reality, let's talk about why people spend money. Why do you spend money? You spend money to make more money, or to save some money. You spend money to save time. You save money to de-risk. Or you spend money to improve your status. Hey, look at this shiny watch I got. Look at this shiny car I got. Why do companies spend money? One of these reasons. They want to de-risk something, but at the end of the day, it is all about making money. So you need to bring as much value as you cost. That's your job. Make them as much money as you cost them. So if you're getting a six-figure salary, the work that you deliver that year needs to at least balance that out. If you're a cost center, that's going to be a problem. And that's how people are looking at things. The reality is, if you don't do that, companies are going to start looking at things. And there's a lot of work out there that just needs to be done. There's a lot of work that just needs to be done in the day-to-day course of business. I call it, when I'm looking at products and product management, I call it KTLO. Anyone familiar with the KTLO? Keep the lights on. The work about the work. The stuff you have to do to manage the work, right? And if that's all you do, that becomes problematic because it's not something that's seen as contributing. I'm in documentation teams, and I'm at the first place where I feel truly supported by the business, because the business recognizes that the documentation for the product is part of the user interface, it's part of the product experience. That's not always the case. A lot of times documentation and support are seen as these things that prevent churn, or they just cost money and we have to do them. But that's luck. But there is a lot of boring work out there that has to be done. And companies have hired people to do that boring work. I'm sure that some of you have a significant portion of your job over the last whatever that is just, it's the work that you don't necessarily get excited about doing, but it's work that needs to be done. And sometimes it's kind of nice to move away from the grueling tasks that you're working on to do those kinds of I don't want to think right now. I'm kind of burned out. I want to do some dumb, boring work. But businesses have kind of figured that out. They figured it out. They've been asking us for years to automate stuff, right? You shouldn't be manually testing your web apps. You should be writing end-to-end tests. They should be automated. Like if you haven't figured that out in a long time, I don't know what to tell you. But sometimes it is a resource constraint. Sometimes it is cheaper to just hire some people to click through web applications and click buttons on things and run test environments than it is to put down the upfront money to build these systems. Sometimes it is just easier to just use a bunch of spreadsheets than it is to pay for a good finance system. Sometimes it's a money issue. But it turns out that AI happens to be really good at burning through this network. It turns out that it's really good at that. We're finding this out. Like, you need a quick website? Just do 5 minutes with Claude Code. You need a quick website. And it'll look fine. And if it doesn't matter, you can move on with your day. Good software developers, they've always known. Good software developers have always known that to automate the stuff away that's boring. They've always known that. The really good software developers already have scripts and pipelines and all kinds of automations that do a lot of stuff for them that's mundane. I mean, if this, then that's been around forever. Zapier's been around forever. These kinds of automation things have been around for quite some time. GitHub Actions. Good software developers already understand this. But the AI agents, they take that to a whole new level. Code is no longer the bottleneck. It used to be the expensive thing. Companies hired thousands of engineers. I know of a bank, okay, large financial institution that you've all heard of. I'm not going to name them, but we were working with them when I was at Temporal. When I was at Temporal, we were working with them, and I found out from our solutions engineer that they have 100,000 software engineers. I still to this day can't imagine a company having 100,000 software engineers. They need all the software engineers because there's code that needs to be written. But do they need 100,000 now? How much of that code doesn't require all of those software engineers? For the longest time, that was the bottleneck, writing the code. It was the most expensive thing. It was the skill. But now, the value of code, it's dropped. It's changed. And, we'll talk about, that might be a little bit sad. We'll talk about that. Thing is, though, AI doesn't think. They predict. LLMs predict. They don't think. They give plausible answers. That's really important to understand. Some of you already understand that implicitly. Like you've been in this industry for a long time, and you go, yeah, that makes sense. I understand how prediction engines work. I understand how transformations and all that work. I understand that. But a lot of people you're going to work with don't. And they're going to hand you stuff that they think is good. Non-technical people don't quite understand that what they're getting isn't quite what they need. The thing that is also important for you software developers to understand is that they're not deterministic systems. That's really important to understand, because you can't do repeatable and predictable things with non-deterministic systems. If you use the same prompt over and over again, you're going to get different answers. So that's something to think about when you're building agentic systems, especially if you're building AI into the workflows. There have been many times when I've seen a button in an app that summarized this article. Hit that button 50 times, it's like you're going to get so many different variations, and maybe eventually you'll get something that you can deal with. But it's never hitting the button and getting the same summary every single time. And that's important when you're building, especially when you're building distributed systems and complex systems that need to be predictable and reliable. But all is not lost, friends. All is not lost, because there are things that AI cannot do. These are the things that you bring to the party. These are the most important things that you bring to the party. You bring taste. Not just that, yes, Claude Code can build you a website, quick. Is it a good website? Does it look nice? Does it connect with people? Does it have the discernment to decide to look at it and go, yeah, that seems good enough? Does it know that good enough is good enough? Doesn't have judgment, it can't make decisions, you can't say how many people should I fire. You can't do that. And it certainly doesn't have the accountability if you do that. Talk about Klarna. Let all their support staff go. And as a result, they were closing more tickets than ever. High ticket closing volume. Awesome, right? Sounds great. Except customer satisfaction went way down because they were closing tickets, they weren't solving problems. The AI was optimized for ticket closure, not for closing issues, not for resolving issues. AI doesn't know what rules to bend because this is a specific customer, they have a good relationship. It doesn't know that this person's in a really rough financial situation and the agent has the latitude to break the rules or bend them or give a payment agreement. Doesn't know those kinds of things, doesn't have judgment. And it certainly doesn't have accountability, so the accountability ended up coming back to Klarna. They had to hire a bunch of people back 2 years later. This isn't just one case with the lawyers.
I put this talk together a while ago, and just last week, a U.S. Federal judge hauled a U.S. Department of Justice lawyer into court to sanction him because he filed briefs that had phony citations in them. The person's defense was, well, I lost my original draft, so I tried to use AI to recreate it. The judge was not amused. Just like the Klarna people, they decided to let AI handle the judgment for them, and just like with Klarna, they got held accountable. Amazon had some outages, and now they're saying, well, it was due to the AI agents that we were using internally, including the one that they run themselves. Can't remember if it's Q or whatever it's called. But the fun thing about that is they were literally saying our internal guardrails that we use for code reviews couldn't keep up with the LLMs. It was generating so much code, we just couldn't do the code reviews. Like, putting these things into production before you have the infrastructure and guardrails in place that's not good judgment, and it's not good accountability. So, doesn't it kind of sound like the bar for judgment and accountability is kind of on the floor at this point? So, I think you're all well positioned to do much better than that. Your taste and judgment have to drive results. That's, I think, probably the most important takeaway I can give you from this conversation. Because AI requires incredibly talented, smart people to drive it. Not just programmers, but the domain experts. If you've been working in an area for a while, you become a domain expert in that area. If you've been working on accounting systems for 10 years, you know accounting systems in and out, whether you wanted to or not. If you've been in healthcare or banking or any of these other things for a long time, you know those systems inside and out. You understand those nuances. And you always see this happen when some 3 or 4 person tech startup with a bunch of money comes in to try to disrupt an industry and ends up falling flat on their face because they don't actually understand the industry that they're in. That's where you come in. You shift from being the code person to being the domain expert so that you can drive these systems, so that you can incorporate feedback from the customers and you can pivot and drive things in the right direction. You might not be the one writing a lot of the code, but you'll be the one making the decisions about what code needs to be written. And that's what I think is the new team model. Instead of 10 people in a pod, 10 engineers in a pod, maybe it ends up being 3 engineers in a pod with lots of tokens. But those 3 engineers are really, really talented and really understand agentic systems, and they really understand the business that they're working in, and they understand the problems they're trying to solve. They're domain experts, and they can drive the results that the company is looking for. And that's where you get to be one of those people. You get to use your taste and experience to drive those results. I've had a massive backlog of stuff on my list for years that I haven't been able to get to. And none of it's actually gonna make me any money, at least in the short term. But it was all stuff that I needed to get done: contributions to open source projects, maintenance of my own open source projects, things I've wanted to finish but couldn't. And I've always looked and said, oh, maybe I could hire an intern. What a cool experience that'd be to hire an intern. And I realized, well, I gotta pay them something that's useful. I can't pay them minimum wage. That's just disrespectful. And so these things just kind of sat and stopped. And then I got Claude Code, and I started ripping through these projects quickly. They were, a lot of them, inconsequential, internal tools that I needed to do my jobs better. Delegating that to Claude Code. Claude Code didn't do all of them correctly. I had to babysit it every single time to ensure that I got what I wanted. But I used my judgment to drive them. As one person, I was able to close out a lot of the projects that I was working on. I think that was the light bulb moment for me. It wasn't that this is going to replace my job. This is going to free up a lot of the stuff that I just can't get to because there are other things higher on the priority stack for me. And now as a single solo founder person, whatever, I can do that kind of stuff. And I think that's what a lot of companies are figuring out, is that they need fewer developers. They hired a lot of people. They hired a lot of people prior to COVID, and just right after, lots of people got hired. And now we're seeing that kind of shrink back. And AI is probably part of the reason for that. And so I have some advice for you. Don't outsource your experience to AI. You're responsible for the code you ship. If you've been in a class with me or you've sat at a table with me, you've heard me say this long before AI. Years ago, it was go to Stack Overflow, go to somebody's blog, find the library you want to use, or copy the code snippet, put in your code base. You're still responsible when that doesn't work, or when that needs to be, or when that library you brought into your code base needs an update years later. You are responsible because you made the choice to bring that in. The same thing holds true with AI. You're making the active choice to use these things. You're making the active choice to let that code get committed to the work that you do. So you're ultimately responsible for it. So don't outsource that knowledge to a machine. Don't advocate your responsibility for what you are doing. I have seen people gleefully say, oh, I'm using AI to write my strategy document. I'm using AI to do my performance evaluations because I just don't have enough time. Now, how would you feel if your boss said, I'm just not going to do the performance evaluation, I'm going to let a robot do that? It's just such a disappointing use of these tools because they're saying, you know what, my judgment isn't important. I'm going to let a machine do it. Because people will find out, they will find you out, and they will discover that I don't need you anymore. And this is especially important for any students in the audience. If a solution to the homework problem that you're working on is to prompt an LLM or drive an agent to do that assignment for you, your degree doesn't have any value. Why would I hire you when I could just make that prompt myself? So spend the time becoming an expert in software development. Don't spend the time, the homework assignments are to help you show competency, not show that you can type something into a prompt. Because I can type something into a prompt. Your employer can type something into a prompt. It'll be very hard for you to keep gainful employment if you substitute an AI's judgment for your own. The other trap is similar to that trap. Don't rely on an AI to be the expert. The line that I tend to use for this is, if it's faster for me to verify it than it is to do it, I'm going to use an AI for it. I'm certainly not going to trust it on things I don't understand. I'm not going to ask it for advice on things I don't understand because I don't know if it's going to hallucinate the answer. I just don't know what I don't know. And when you don't know what you don't know if you can actually trust it. My litmus test is to consistently ask Claude and ChatGPT stupid questions that I already know the answer to and see how much it makes up. Because there are things I know pretty well. There are things that you all know pretty well. Sit down and have a conversation with these things and see the gaps that it has. And you'll very quickly discover, once you get past the surface level, it's just trying to connect the dots and complete things. And when it gets into areas that it was never trained on, the hallucinations get bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, we talk about taste and judgment, but sometimes good enough is good enough. There's lots of situations where a company doesn't really care about your taste and judgment, they just need the work done. And those are the kinds of jobs that I do see kind of disappearing. I've been in situations where it wasn't about the content anymore.